Yeah, this is ThinkTech. I'm Jay Fidell. We're happy to be doing this. This is Community Matters. We're going to talk about climate change, changes in rainfall with a guy who knows a lot about that, meteorologist at SOWEST, but also a member of the Water Resources Research Council. Did I get that right?
Water Resources Research
Center, sorry.
not council. Yeah.
Pao-Shin Chu at the University of Hawaii knows a lot about water and rainfall. I'm going to talk to him about how climate change affects rainfall. He's been doing a lot of work on that. But let me ask you first, though. There was a conference here just a few days ago. It was a virtual conference called International Tropical Islands Water Conference, more specifically Tropical Island Water Futures, water for people and ecosystems in the face of change. Boy, that is right on our subject today. Can you tell us what that was about and how it went?
So there are several parallel sessions, and some is about water management, some about hydrological modeling, some about the climate variability, okay, and some session deals with the Hawaii data portal and so on. Okay, right. And because I think the University of Hawaii has one water center, but at the University of Guam, there is also a sister center at the University of Guam. And also, I think Virgin Island, U.S. Virgin Island, there's also another one. So I think the three centers collaborate together to have this kind of international tropical water conference, tropical island water conference, because all Guam, Virgin Island, and Hawaii, they are all located in the tropical, in the tropics. They are also islands.
Yeah, that's the operative term, islands, tropical islands. So what's the common denominator for water in tropical islands? Why do you treat them all together and study them in a group that way?
Yeah, because in the tropics, we know temperature doesn't change too much from day to day, from season to season, from year to year. But the rainfall is a different story. This year could be very wet. The next year could be very dry. Sometimes we will have a prolonged drought, which causes a lot of problems. And also, even if you have a rainfall, but the rainfall does not come evenly in time. Sometimes they come in a short burst, very intense rainfall, right, and cause a lot of problems, flooding and other issues, and also cause environmental degradation, because once we have this heavy rainstorm, you can see on the coast you always have this groundwater advisory, which affect the marine, ecosystem, reef, and others. So there's and also rainfall affects almost everything, from drinking to agriculture to transportation, everything you need.
Yeah, I was watching a very interesting Netflix documentary about water, and it strikes me from that, and we have water problems coming around the world. I'm sure you've seen that and study it, but it strikes me that if you're on an island, you have to find a source of fresh water. It's not like being on the mainland, right? We do need fresh water to live. Now, I mentioned this to my walking buddy today, and he said, "Well, we're surrounded by water. It shouldn't be a problem." I said, "It is a problem." He says, "Well, there's all this water out there." I said, "That's all salt water." If you want to make salt water into fresh water, you have to do desalination, and desalination requires billions and billions of dollars, which we don't have. What is your comment about that, Pao-Shin?
Yeah, I think that as a climatologist, I think the first and foremost issue we need to do is to better understand, our environment and how the changes in environment will cause changes in water, right? Because water comes from the atmosphere, but the atmosphere is always changing from day to day, from month to month. So only, first thing is, is that if we understand different kind of weather system that control the rainfall, then we can better understand this rainfall variability, and then comes down to the water variability, and then come to the like a groundwater recharge, this kind of system, variation. So rainfall is a main source.
Yes, rainfall is the main source. Now we have aquifers. We have aquifers here. We have aquifers, a kind of a variation on the theme in Maui, and we have aquifers. We also have high altitude aquifers. Don Thomas, your colleague, discovered that a few years ago. That we have water way up high in the mountains, Mauna Loa, Mauna Kea, the Saddle Road there. And so, do we have enough water? Pao-Shin, I mean, is Hawaii okay on water?
I think a study made a few years ago indicates that maybe by 2030, we're going to be at the cross sections for the demand and the supply, which is at the point. And after that, I think that we have just less water supply than what really we need. Okay, so that's gonna be a problem in the future.
I once called the Department of Water Supply, and I said, "Are you guys working on desalinization?" And they said, can you call us back in 20 years? We'll let you know. And I said to myself, gee, don't we have to plan for desalinization? At the very least, we have to set aside the money. In San Diego, they did desalinization, and they spent, in the first chapter of it, they spent $10-12 billion. And we would need to spend billions too right here. Is desalinization a solution for Hawaii later on?
Maybe this all depends on the cost and the effect, right? Everything. I think in California, Southern California, it never rains in Southern California, particularly in summertime. So and also with the large population there, definitely water is not enough to be generated locally. So they need a desalination at all costs. But in Hawaii, I think the story can be somewhat different, because we still have a good aquifer here, right? So we can still pump water from ground, until one day when we reach this balanced level, then maybe we have to think whether we should continue to pump water from ground, or we should use some other means. And hopefully by then technology becomes cheaper, so we can use a better way to desalinate ocean water.
Well, what about what do they call it? The lens. The lens in the aquifer, the place where seawater and fresh water meet. Are our aquifers being damaged by the population? Are aquifers being damaged by damage to the geology around the aquifer?
This part I don't know. I'm not a geologist, okay, so that I cannot say anything about that.
What about contamination of the water that the groundwater? What about contamination? Because we've had, for example, Red Hill. They have military oil tanks there that are leaching out into the groundwater. I mean, are there technologies where you can clean that up?
I think that the technology is there, but whether the party is willing to invest so much to clean the water or not, that's something we don't know. I think maybe they say, oh, we're going to clean the water, but I don't know to what extent they will do that. Right? So you always have to look over their shoulder to make sure they're really doing a good job.
Sure. Well, look at Flint, Michigan. We have to watch government to be sure that government keeps the water clean. So.
Right. Detroit, right? Detroit.
Yeah.
Detroit. I think it's one of the worst place in the country with unclean water.
But you spoke a little while ago about how the seasons change. The rainwater changes from season to season, And my guess is that implicitly what you're saying is climate change is behind or exacerbates those changes. Am I right?
Yeah, I think the theory shows that because we are experiencing this global warming, right? Okay, so temperature is on the rise year after year, and the theory shows that if you have an increase by 1 degree C warming, then you expect to see increase 7% of humidity or moisture in the atmosphere. Okay, right? So that according to this theory, called a Clapeyron theory, that as warming goes on, then you have a more moisture. Then if you have a more moisture in the atmosphere, then when when the rainstorm comes, so that it would get more moisture from the ordinary rainstorms. Okay. So there's a likelihood it will dump more rainfall than before. So you might expect to see more intense rainfall in some locations. Remember in 2018, on northern Hawaii, okay, right? We had this severe flooding. The coastal community was cut out for almost 1 week, right? Because the road was closed, okay? And there's only one road, okay? And so we received almost 50 inches of rainfall in 24 hours. So that sets a new US record, 24-hour rainfall on Kauai. Okay, so that was just that was just about 3 years ago, this time in April.
Well, what's the connection between this increased rainfall and extreme weather? Does weather follow the increase in rainfall or the decrease in rainfall?
Well, extreme weather can be a number of things, right? You can have a very strong wind, you can have a lot of snow, so different things. And you can have an extremely cold temperature, just like what happened in Texas, right? 3 months ago. Right? But in Hawaii, usually the extreme weather means extreme, heavy rainfall, downpour occurs in a short burst. So that caused a lot of problems. Even last month in March, and the National Weather Service issued 11 flash flood warnings.
Yes.
So that was very unusual.
Yes. Well, these floods and this extreme weather, it reminds me of extreme rainfall. It reminds me of, I think it was like 10 or 15 years ago in Hawaii, we had 40 days. It was out of the Bible,
yeah. Yeah, that was that was in 2006, right? Yeah, 40 days of rain. It rained every day, right? And in some period it was very heavy rainfall.
Yeah, how do you explain that?
Well, that was I think maybe where you have some kind of we call it blocking system in the atmosphere. So the normal atmospheric flow is blocked by this kind of system. So it doesn't. So the things do not change. They just stay there for many days. So everything just gets stuck in the atmosphere, no moving. Because usually you see the atmospheric flow, from travels very fast from one place to another. So like you have this kind of frontal system, past maybe 2 to 3 days. Then after that, we see very nice weather. Then another cycle comes, but at that time, because of the blocking system, so that if it rains, then continues to rain. If it is no rain, then the same place will experience no rain for such a long time.
So looking back at the conference last week, on an island tropical phenomena, how does that compare with for example, the U.S. mainland? I mean, do they have the same things happening, or is it different than Hawaii and Guam? And,
usually it's different because when you talk about the U.S. mainland, it is located in the mid-latitude. So it's different from tropics. So the weather system governing mid-latitude are different that govern tropics. Because in the tropics, mainly we have this very nice trade wind, easterly trade wind. So the wind moving from east to west. And then we have a mountain here. So the air from the open ocean is forced to rise along the mountain barrier. So the air, rises and then cools and then condenses into cloud. Then eventually you have some rain coming out from this orographic system. So you have this orographic rainfall, which is pretty common on the windward side, right? Like you drive to the windward side, and you can see along the party there's always cloud hanging there. So that's orographic cloud, and then generate orographic rainfall. But on the mainland, usually the system is different. You don't have this very steady trade wind. Instead, you have this transient system. So every week or every 2 weeks or 3 weeks, you have a moving system passing by. So mainly caused by the frontal activity, jet stream, and so on.
So where is this taking us with climate change? Let's assume for this discussion, climate change is going to get worse. Let's just, because I think it is getting worse, and we're not doing enough about it. So, so we're going to have more of these rainfall episodes. We're going to have them, well, I guess, all over the world. And the question I put to you is, how is that going to affect access to fresh water? Does it have no effect on access to fresh water? Does it help? Does it hinder? Does it make it more difficult for a given community?
Right, I think it's a region dependent. Some areas that get wetter, some dry area can become drier. So there's no universal change, across the world. It's just very dependent on region. Even for Hawaii, we are a small island, but still shows the windward-leeward difference. And in the future, when the climate change, some studies shows that the windward side becomes wetter, the leeward side becomes drier. But some studies shows that this is not the case. So it's not, for sure what would happen in the future. But the one thing we know is that there will be some changes.
Yeah,
it's not a business as usual.
Well, here's a sort of a primitive, non-scientific possibility for you. See what you think of it. So if it's raining outside, and I take a bucket, and I put a bucket in my backyard, at the end of the rainstorm, I'm going to have some water in the bucket. So how about we try to save this rain? When the rain comes down, we can, with meteorology, we can predict it, right? We can predict when the rain is going to come, and we take a bucket, a really big bucket, and we try to save this water for use later. Is that a solution for the community?
I think that's something that kind of method is being used on the Big Island, because the Big Island they don't have it's really big. Okay, they don't have a network like a bottled water supply which can provide water to all the residents. So you have to store your own water. So they depend very much on rainwater. But in case of you have a prolonged drought, last several seasons, maybe several years, maybe even more than 1 year, you're gonna have a problem, because pretty soon you find out that the storage tank turns to almost empty, because the rainwater you catch is not enough to sustain this long period of drought. So then they have to buy water from somewhere else, then become very expensive. So that so I think that it is a good idea. If there is a good device you can think of, catch all this rainwater and put in your backyard, and then you can use it for gardening, for washing the cars, or something else. That's good. But otherwise, I see really most of rains, just a drain to the ocean. It's really a waste here. So I think that I think that it's better that maybe the state and city government needs to provide some kind of effective tools so homeowners can use that to store water.
Some kind of advanced technology for catchment, yeah? Catchment systems.
Right.
What about making bigger reservoirs to hold more water for more time?
Yeah, well, the problem is that the land price in the land is very expensive particularly on Oahu, right? And also very few lands available, so that I don't know that if you want to build a big reservoir, you need a big land, and also from the public. I don't know, from private, anybody, maybe some Alexander Baldwin may have some kind of land, but I don't know whether they are willing to designate for the reservoir or not. Maybe it's not it's not viable economical.
It's not the highest and best use right now.
No.
But don't you agree that as time goes by, and the water systems we have are not adequate to provide access to fresh water given to the growing community, if you will, or the community as it then exists, water is going to be more difficult to find. I mean, water is going to be more expensive. I was telling you about this documentary I saw, where in many places in the world, they do not have access to fresh water, that their systems have been abandoned. Africa, for example, Lagos. And the result is that the people cannot get fresh water from, the streams and the lakes and the springs and what have you. So they live on bottled water. But the cost of a bottled water, often by the Nestle Corporation, is so expensive that it's equal to a half a day's labor, which means you don't get a lot of water, and you don't have water to clean with, or cook with.
Right. And also, if you have this reservoir, then who's going to maintain the reservoir? Okay, because you cannot just build a reservoir, just leave it there, and don't do any maintenance. And just remember, maybe I don't know how many years ago, on Hawaii, there was a dam failure caused by heavy rain, and it killed 7 people.
Yes.
And caused I think litigations, huge litigations. I don't know if the case has been resolved or not. But anyway, I think the owner of Honda Bluebird was also the owner of that reservoir, and he was sued.
Yeah. So, sure. That was very serious. Yes. Very serious case.
So there's always this kind of issue that who is to be responsible for the reservoir.
Yeah, that's still happening, where reservoirs are not, where waterways are not being maintained, and so the result is it gets dangerous if there's too much rainfall, too much water.
Yeah, right. Just last month on Maui, there was almost one reservoir almost overtopped, because evacuation of a lot of people downstream. So I think maybe March 8th, I forgot which day, during that time. So you can see this from newspaper. Issue.
So what's the cutting edge in your area, of water, rainfall, and managing water, managing fresh water on islands, managing looking at it from a meteorological point of view, and from a
looking from a meteorological point, because I think this question maybe the best person to answer would be from the Board of Water Supply, the director, managing water. But from meteorological point of view, I think nowadays we use state-of-the-art numerical models with a high resolution, so that using this kind of models, then we can simulate and also predict rainfall in the Hawaii island, maybe with a lead time several days in advance, or maybe even weeks in advance. So we know when you expect a storm rain is coming, And also with that kind of model, you can also do some kind of future projection to project, like say 50 years from now.
Oh, wow.
Yeah, right.
So how do you do that? What do you put into the model? What's the data?
Yeah, because the current model we have is a smaller scale. But then for the future scenario, you can get this scenario from global model. Then you use this global model as your boundary and the initial condition to force this smaller scale model, which has a high resolution. Right? Then you can use the smaller model with the input from the global model to generate the scenario for the future for the next 50 years.
Well, that sounds like it would be pretty accurate in the sense that you're looking at the global model, and then you're taking the elements of the global model and you're using them in order to develop the local model.
Right.
So it gives you a greater depth, a greater accuracy just from that.
Right.
Huh?
That's right. Yeah, but the issue is that the computer cost is very expensive to run this kind of model because it's a high resolution. It's a numerical. So computer time is slower. But I think this is the right thing to do.
Yeah,
And
but is that what you're working on these models?
Yeah, and then you have to use the supercomputer because ordinary my desktop computer is too small for that kind of run. You need to use a supercomputer. Maui, there's a supercomputer. UH also has a supercomputer. You use this kind of supercomputer to run simulation.
So
because
where do you get the data
time
from?
is very long in the future for the next 50 years.
Where do you get the data from that you put into the model?
The data you can get from the this international community. Nowadays, many international communities produce this kind of global models, projections. So you can use their output as a boundary condition to drive your smaller scale model.
So the picture that you've selected as a virtual background behind you, Pao-Shin, is really fascinating. It's Europe. It's the Czech Republic and Europe, Yugoslavia, and that area.
Yeah.
Come back. Don't leave us.
Okay.
Don't leave us.
Yeah.
So we talked a little before the show, but this is an international effort to make these global models, right? And you go to conferences, whether in person or by virtual, you go to conferences all over the world, and you have meteorologists all over the world submitting data and analyzing the data. Can you talk about the international quality of this?
Yeah, the international quality, of course, some models are not very good. But the most models are good. So that by comparing model against model, then you can select which one you feel is more comfortable, you have more confidence. Then you use the model projections from some particular models. And then I think that's give you a better result.
Well, whether it's directly connected with climate change or not, whether a given rainfall event, however intense or not intense, is connected with, extreme weather episodes and climate change episodes or not. It seems to me this is very useful for municipal and statewide planning. I'm sure this must have come up in your conference last week. In other words, you have a tropical island, and the model tells you we're going to have big rainfall, such as we did in 2005, or along those lines. And so you, as the scientific community, you report that to government. And for that matter, you probably want to report it to people in general. But my question is, and it's my last question, I'm sorry, we're almost out of time, is now we know there's going to be an extreme rainfall. We know this is going to be a real serious rainfall, a rainfall that could damage the community, damage agriculture, damage this, do runoff, right? Runoff the topsoil, all those things, those, adverse effects. What can we, being so advised, when you tell us this, what can we do to deal with it, to prepare for it, to be resilient and to recover from it?
Yeah, I think that one example is that if you can better project what happened for the next 30 years, next 40 years, okay, then you can tell the government agency decision maker that suppose which area is going to be drier and drier, okay, right? And then maybe the government can say, okay, suppose this is used to be agricultural land, then maybe I should plant something which is more water resistant, okay, instead of water which requires a lot of water. So that this would help the government and also maybe some private organizations to mitigate some kind of potential problems, okay? And also that so I think this is important. And even some areas which are you think that maybe there's a potential for flooding in the future becomes worse, particularly with the sea level rise. And then maybe the government can say, well, maybe some private landowners can say, okay, what am I going to do with this piece of land? Maybe instead of building a house along the coast, maybe I should do something else. So I think that depends on the user, so that this information would be very valuable for decision making.
Absolutely, and it's a multidisciplinary kind of analysis, multidisciplinary kind of advice. I'm looking at the site for the Water Resource Research Center at UH Manoa. And I'm just listing the various disciplines involved: water quality, ecology, public health, hydrology science, right, social dimensions and economics, all relevant, water and wastewater engineering, and environmental assessment and protection. And you've got academics and scientists from all over all of those areas of research.
Right.
And you're one of a dozen or more members of the center, am I right?
Right. Because water affects everybody. So it's really multidisciplinary kind of approach. Everybody is affected by water. Yeah, even professor from law school, there's some issues regarding the water right. Who has a right for this this piece of land? There's always issue. Yeah. So that really is interdisciplinary.
Yeah, and all changing. The only constant is change.
Yeah, right.
Thank you, Pao-Shin. It's really been great talking with you. Thank you for coming down and talking with us.
Yeah.
It's great to hear about this very important